As the corruption debate rages in the country called Kenya, there are some very important key points that I've noticed most people don't realize. And without grasping these two very important points, fighting corruption, presenting suggestions on how to fight corruption is just a waste of time. It will not work. And my 2 points illustrate that corruption is such a serious cancer in Kenya that it is not possible, even surgery will not remove that cancer. Now, when you cannot surgically remove cancer, the only option is to let the patient die. Just forget about it. Now, in the medical profession, of course, they don't let the patient die. What happens is they make their life as comfortable as is possible and wait for the inevitable. But in our case as a country, what we need to do is just to kill this thing, and start afresh. Now, don't worry. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, you'll have a pretty good idea very soon. And I'll start it with a story that happened in the 70s. There was a bank robbery bang in the middle of the CBD, Nairobi. And as the thugs, the bank robbers, fled with their loot of Kenya shillings in the car, some policemen, there must have been new policemen in town, gave chase. Now, the really shocking thing here is that the car sped towards State House, and it sped right inside State House. And of course, that was the end of that car chase. The bank robbers had gotten away, clean. Now, of course, in those days, you don't talk about such issues, So that happened, it happened. Those who knew kept mum about it, forgot about it. There was also something again which was very interesting, What used to happen just before elections, bank robberies would skyrocket. Banks were being robbed all over the place. And the bank robbers were vanishing with huge sums of money. No arrests were ever made in those days. Now, in the run-up to the just concluded elections, because old habits die very hard, in the run-up to the recently concluded elections, you will remember that there was an upsurge in the robberies of M-Pesa shops, M-Pesa outlets. And in some of these robberies, people got killed. Now, the insinuation here is very clear, that people raise money for political campaigns from robberies. And so, why should it be surprising when these people who have robbed to raise money for their campaigns, are finally elected into office, and they rob public coffers? Of course, what they do after they've been elected is dressed in very nice, kind language, with the use of that word corruption. A very boring word, a long word, indeed a difficult word to spell for some, But if you can just call a spade, it is robbery, theft, stealing, nothing less than that. Now, the second very important point, again I'll illustrate in a story. When President Emilio Stanley Mwai Kibaki took office in early 2003, that administration started out very well. In fact, a lot of Kenyans had a lot of high hopes. because that administration came into power with a clarion call, the promise to voters of zero tolerance to corruption. And initially, they did not disappoint. The East African newspaper, the weekly newspaper, carried a very interesting story that brought joy in the hearts of many Kenyans. And most of you will remember that story, I believe. Yeah, heads of major parastatals turned up at State House with briefcases full of money. And President Kibaki was quoted as having asked them, "What is this money for?" And the gist of that story is that these people were turned away with the money. Kenyans were very happy. Kenyans were sure that corruption in Kenya had been brought to an end. And we even had a story of the public arresting a traffic policeman, whom they caught red-handed, taking a bribe from the driver of the matatu they were traveling in. Now you'll also remember that one of the consequences of all these very good things which were happening in Kenya was that the Mwai Kibaki government became very unstable. Analysts, including yours truly, predicted that this particular Mwai Kibaki government would not last if they continued at the same rate of instability, serious instability. Now at around that time, Mwai Kibaki consulted retired President Daniel Arap Moi, and it became clear that President Daniel Arap Moi had been roped in, as an advisor to help to stabilize the new government. Now the first thing that happened is that the zero tolerance to corruption policy was abandoned. And the minute that was abandoned, so that the cartels, the business as usual guys came back, the government of Mwai Kibaki immediately stabilized. Now what that story illustrates or tells us very clearly is that it is impossible to run a stable government in Kenya without corruption, without the cartels. It cannot be done. And we have the evidence of Mwai Kibaki. Mwai Kibaki tried to do that noble thing, and he failed. Now what those 2 points tell us very, very clearly is that it's a waste of time to discuss solutions, to the current rot in this country called Kenya. It is a complete waste of time discussing any solutions, until you do one thing. And that one thing is to get the current administration to resign. And I'm not saying they resign and then the opposition take over. No way. A lot of those major figures in the opposition also have scandals of their own. Indeed, when we expected people like Moses Wetangula, Musalia Mudavadi, and Kalonzo Musyoka to come out with strong statements talking about corruption, they have remained very quiet. But we know why. They have all been linked to major corruption scandals in the past. Once you've gotten the current administration out of power, then the next thing would be to come up with a very strict vetting exercise that starts with the candidate's credentials as far as fighting corruption is concerned, the candidate's credentials as far as past corruption scandals are concerned. Now, of course, I realize that if that particular vetting I'm talking about is done, then every major political leader you can think of today would be disqualified. And that would be good. Remember how I started? I said that corruption is such a serious cancer in this patient called Kenya that surgery is out of question. Because the only surgery that will work in this case is to cut off all the vital organs of the patient. And if you do that, obviously they die. So surgery is out of question. The only thing that will work is a brand new beginning with very strict brand new rules. We must make a decision as Kenyans that never again will people go into public office as a money-making enterprise. If we do not want to take these very drastic steps, some will say unrealistic steps, then we'd better forget about fighting corruption. We'd better not waste our time and energy discussing solutions to corruption, because there are no other solutions until you make those drastic moves I've just mentioned. Now, I don't know if you know this, but the truth is, corruption started out as a tool to aid in security of the state. When Jomo Kenyatta took over leadership of this country, it was quickly noted that a major threat to the presidency and a threat to the security of the state were the small group of white farmers who had opted to remain in Kenya after independence. Now, these people are very wealthy, and in a poor country like Kenya, it was feared that they would use their wealth to destabilize the government. And so one of the solutions was to ensure that the government of Jomo Kenyatta had backing from people who are very wealthy. And so what do? You ensure that all the people close to that administration, all the members of the kitchen cabinet, all the major supporters of that government are made rich as soon as possible, like yesterday. Now, believe it or not, many of these people got wealthy, from public funds in this way, believed that they were serving their country. And again, believe it or not, some of our thieves, some of our robbers of public coffers, some of the people engaged in corruption in high places still believe the same. They believe they are serving their country by robbing the exchequer. Actually, the solutions to our corruption cancer in the country called Kenya are all very simple, surprisingly simple and straightforward. However, they are all drastic. For instance, the simplest and the most straightforward way of vetting all candidates for political office, current and those who are vying in future, is to do a simple lifestyle audit. And in that lifestyle audit, we ask the obvious questions. Where is your money coming from? Or where did your money come from? Simple question which needs a simple answer. And if you inherited your money, where did your parents earn that money? Where did they make that money? Where did the money come from? Now, of course, some very clever people will say, we have businesses, we have investments. Fine. But where did the seed money for those investments, where did the seed money for those companies come from? Can you show us documents of the bank loans? Not fake ones, very genuine, very simple questions. It has nothing to do with tribe. It has nothing to do with hitting a certain political candidate. It is non-partisan. Those are just very simple questions which deserve very simple, straightforward answers. If we're really serious about changing our country, then we must stop glorifying thieves, because they're just thieves, nothing else. Even a smart thief, a smart robber, is a thief and a robber. Because Bill Gates is rich, but we know how Bill Gates made his money. Donald Trump had a huge fortune even before he became president, and we know exactly where that money came from. The late Steve Jobs was very rich, but he didn't start out rich. But we know exactly where the money came from. He did not supply any government with anything, especially air. No way. So if you're a Kenyan and you have money, it's time we stopped admiring you. How many new choppers you've bought, how many private jets you've bought. It's time we stopped all that and asked the very simple question. How did you make your money? And we need to ask those questions now. Because if we don't ask them now, imagine the Kenya we are leaving to our children. Is this the Kenya we want to leave for our children? Is this the Kenya we want to leave for future generations? I don't think so. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.